Lesson 13, item number 1. Subtract 3 over d minus 4 over 7. So to get the least common denominator, the method I use is I put my denominators here and I find my greatest common factor in this first column. The only thing that will go into d and 7 is 1. That means there's a d left there and a 7 left there. So my LCM is 1 times d times 7, which is 7d. That means I need to make both of these denominators a 7d. So 7d is my common denominator. I'll go ahead and write it here. The first fraction is missing a factor of 7, so multiply the bottom by 7 and the top by 7. The second fraction is missing a factor of d, so multiply the bottom times d and the top times d. Now you'll see that these have the common denominator of 7d, and that's why I can write it in my final answer. 7 times 3 is 21, minus 4 times d is 4d. Since 21 minus 4d is a binomial, the only way it could factor is first greatest common factor, which 21 and 4 do not have, or our square or cube patterns. And since d is to the first power, there is no pattern here, so this is my final answer. I cannot reduce the 7 with the 21 or the d with the 4d because of the subtraction in the numerator. 21 minus 4d will only reduce with a 21 minus 4d. Number 2. 5a plus 3 over 6a minus 2a plus 1 over 8a. First, I will find my least common denominator. 6a and 8a. I notice they have a 2a in common. That's going to leave a 3 and a 4, because 2a times 3 is 6a and 2a times 4 is 8a. That means that the LCM is 2a times 3 times 4, which is 24a. So my common denominator, my final answer, will be 24a. So I have to make each of these denominators a 24a. Well, the first denominator is missing a factor of 4. So when I do the 4, I have to do it times everything in the numerator. And the second one is missing a factor of 3. So if I multiply the denominator by 3, I have to multiply everything in the numerator by 3. Now I have to be careful here because of this minus sign. This minus is going to go with this 3 when it gets distributed. So I'm going to have 20a plus 12, that's 4 times 5a and 4 times 3, minus 6a minus 3, because minus 3 times 2a is minus 6a and minus 3 times 1 is minus 3. Now I need to combine my like terms to get my final answer. 20a minus 6a is 14a, and 12 minus 3 is positive 9. Again, there's no way to reduce this since there are no common factors in the numerator that can reduce with a common factor in the denominator. These numerator expressions are terms. 14a is a term and plus 9 is a term, and they have to stay together. So that's my final answer. Number 3, subtract 4 over 5v squared minus 3 over 2v cubed. So I need to find the least common denominator for 5v squared and 2v cubed. Well, 5 and 2 don't have a common factor, but I see they both have v squared. So that's going to leave a 5 in the first column and a 2v in the second. that means that my least common denominator, or least common multiple, is v squared times 5 times 2v, which is 10v cubed. Both of these denominators must be 10v cubed. So the first denominator is missing a 2 and a v. So I have to multiply it times 2v and the numerator times 2v. That's going to give me 5 times 2 is 10, v squared times v is the 10v cubed. So that gives me an 8v in that numerator. The second denominator is only missing a 5, so I'll multiply the bottom by 5 and the top by 5, and that gives me a 10v cubed. So that's going to be minus 15. And again, since 8v minus 15 cannot be factored, there's no way to reduce this fraction. So that's our final answer, 8v minus 15 over 10v cubed. Number 4, subtract x plus 6 over x plus 5 minus x minus 2 over x. Now the addition methods are exactly the same as the subtraction, but we're doing a lot of subtraction just because those are a little bit more difficult and you need more practice with those. So x plus 5 and x don't have any common factors because x plus 5, each of those numbers are terms. So there are no common factors, so that's going to make our LCD x plus 5 times x. And I like to put the x in the front, but the x can go in the front or the back. It means the same thing. If you look at the first fraction, it's missing a factor of x. If you put an x in the denominator, you have to put an x in the top. And I put the parentheses to remind us that that x has to be multiplied times both terms in the numerator. If you look at this denominator, you'll notice that we need to include the factor of x plus 5. And look, these are binomials, so you better keep them in parentheses. So that's x plus 5 in the bottom and in the top, being multiplied. Now, I'm going to need a little more space to do this, so let me go ahead for now. Let me just move this guy down here. I'm going to get x times x and x times 6. X squared plus 6x. Now I need to go over to the side and FOIL this numerator out because I have to remember to subtract every one of them, and if I don't do that I will miss a sign. So I'm going to go down here and go x times x, x squared, x times 5, 5x, minus 2 times x, minus 2x, minus 2 times 5, minus 10. So that's going to be minus, I'm going to leave him in parentheses until I subtract it, x squared plus 3x minus 10. So that's what I get when I do this multiplication of these two binomials. Now all of that is over my denominator, x times x plus 5. Now I'm going to subtract everything in that. Now I'm going to subtract everything in this second numerator. So it's x squared plus 6x minus x squared minus 3x plus 10. So this is the important thing, is that this minus gets applied to all of these after I multiply them. Now if I combine like terms, x squared minus x squared is 0. 6 minus 3 gives me 3x plus 10 over x times x plus 5. Now this is my final answer because the 3x and the 10 are terms. They're not factors, so I can't reduce terms without reducing the whole thing. So if there was a 3x plus 10 in the denominator, I could reduce to 3x plus 10. Otherwise, it has to stay like that. So that's my final answer for number 4. Number 5. X over x plus 2 minus 5 over 6x plus 12. Now this is the first denominator we've come in contact with where we need to factor. So before we can find the common denominator, we need to have the denominators in factored form. And you'll notice that 6x plus 12 factors as 6 times x plus 2. And now it may not be necessary for you to make a chart, because you may just recognize that, look, these have x plus 2 in common. The only thing they don't have in common is the 6. So my LCD is going to be 6 times x plus 2. So I have to multiply this one by 6. And I'll put the 6 in the front on the top. But as long as you do the top and the bottom by the same thing. Now they have matching denominators. So my common denominator is 6 times x plus 2. And my numerator is 6x minus 5. Now be careful, you can't reduce those 6's. The 6x minus 5 is a binomial. Those are terms, not factors, and you can't reduce part of terms. You have to take the whole thing or nothing. So those 6's cannot be reduced. Be really careful about that. Number 6, 4x over 3x minus 15, subtract x minus 3 over 2x minus 10. Again, I notice that my denominators will factor. The first one has a common factor of 3. 3 times x minus 5. Subtract x minus 3, and the denominator has a common factor of 2, x minus 5. Now because this is a binomial, I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses around it that will remind me that this minus is going to get applied to everything. But I also need to look at what they have in common and what they don't. So I'll make my little chart down here. 3 times x minus 5, 2 times x minus 5. So the least common denominator is the product, the multiplication of the common factor. The greatest common factor here is x minus 5, and the factors they don't have in common, which 3 for the first one, 2 for the second one. So that means that 6 times x minus 5 is my common denominator. Both of these must have 6 times x minus 5. Well, the first one is missing a factor of 2. That would give me the 6. I've got the 3, I need the 2. If I multiply the bottom by 2, I have to multiply the top by 2. The second one, 2x minus 5, is missing the 3. So multiply the bottom by 3, have to multiply the top by 3. And having those parentheses there remind me I'm going to be distributing the 3 and the minus times both of those. So this little chart is a way that helps me to find the least common denominator. You may be able to do it without the chart, and that's fine. But if you struggle with it, always make a chart, help you find the GCF, what they don't have in common, and then multiply all that together. Now I know that my common denominator and my answer is going to be 6 and x minus 5. I don't know if it'll reduce or not, but I do know that that's my common denominator. The first numerator here is 8x, and then I'm going to distribute minus 3, minus 3x, and then plus 9. And all of that is over 6 times x minus 5. And now I can combine like terms, 5x plus 9. This is my final answer because 5x plus 9 won't factor, and you can't take part of 5x plus 9. It's all or nothing. Number 7. 6 over 5x minus 4 minus 8 over 4 minus 5x. To do this one, let's put the second denominator in standard form. So no changes to the first fraction. The second one I'm going to put negative 5x plus 4. And now I notice that the second denominator has a leading coefficient that is negative. So I'm going to factor out a negative 1 out of the second denominator. So negative 1 times 5x minus 4. And so I notice now that they have a common denominator, only this negative, I'm going to go ahead and divide it into that 8. So 6 over 5x minus 4 minus negative 8 over 5x minus 4. And this minus and a minus here, subtraction and a negative, make that 6 plus 8 over the common denominator of 5x minus 4. So the final answer ends up being 14 over 5x minus 4. And as we've said before, you cannot reduce this because there are no common factors in the denominator. Those are terms, and terms cannot be reduced. The only thing that would reduce with a binomial 5x minus 4 is another binomial, just like that, as a factor in the numerator 5x minus 4. Number 8, 3 over u squared minus 4 minus 2u over u squared minus 7u plus 10 plus 6 over u squared minus 3u minus 10. We need to factor all of these denominators. So u squared minus 4 is the difference of squares. U plus 2, u minus 2. The second one is a trinomial. The factors of 10 that will give us a minus 7 and a plus 10, u minus 5, u minus 2. And the last one, a trinomial where the factors of negative 10 that will give us a negative 3, u minus 5, u plus 2. Now this time, you'll see that they don't all have a common factor. These two have a common factor. The last two do. The first and the last one have a common factor. The first and the second one have a common factor, but they don't all have a common factor. So to find the LCD for this is pretty easy. We're going to start just by listing the first denominator. So u plus 2 and u minus 2. Now we're going to compare that to the second denominator, and we'll notice that there is a u minus 2, but the u minus 5 is missing. So I'm going to now include a factor of u minus 5. I go over to my third denominator, and I notice u minus 5 is included and u plus 2 is included. So here's my LCD. I don't need to include that u minus 2 two different times. Okay, I just need to include it once. And the same thing with the u minus 5. So again, because I had 3 denominators this time, and they had nothing in common, I list the first denominator, u plus 2, u minus 2, and then I go through and I include the factors that the other 2 don't have. And by the time I got to the third one, all of the factors were already there. So this is my least common denominator. Now the best thing to do is to have your factors, your denominators factored. So the first one was u plus 2, u minus 2. And then compare this denominator to the LCD, and you'll notice that we're missing a u minus 5. So I need a u minus 5 in the denominator and a u minus 5 in the numerator, and since it's a binomial, keep it in parentheses. All right, for the second one, our second denominator was u minus 2, u minus 5, and you'll notice that it needs a factor of u plus 2. So u plus 2 in the denominator and u plus 2 in the numerator. Then the final fraction, there was a 6 in the numerator. The denominator had a u minus 5 and a u plus 2. And when compared to the least common denominator, there's a u minus 2 that is missing. So we put it in the denominator and in the numerator as a factor. That is, it's multiplied. So now we're going to multiply out these numerators. So the first one becomes 3u minus 15. Here we got to be careful. We got a minus. So minus 2u squared minus 4u. That's my second numerator. Then plus 6u minus 12, and all of that is over the common denominator, u minus 5, u plus 2, and u minus 2. Now I need to clean up the numerator to see if it will reduce. So let's simplify it. Minus 2u squared is the only term with a square. So that takes care of minus 2u squared. Then I have a 3u, a minus 4u, and a 6u. That's a 3u minus 4u, it's a minus 1u, plus 6u is a plus 5u. That takes care of all of the u terms. Then I have a minus 15 and a minus 12. That's a minus 27. So minus 27. All of that is over my common denominator, u minus 5, u plus 2, and u minus 2. Now I'm not completely sure that my numerator won't factor, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out a negative 1, or negative sign. That's a 2u squared minus 5u plus 27 over u minus 5, u plus 2, and u minus 2. And I'm going to use my AC method to see if this will factor. So 2 times 27 is 54. The factors of 54 are 1 and 54, 2 and 27, 3 and 18, 4 won't go evenly, 5 won't go evenly, 6 times 9. Can I get a 5 from any combination here? The first two will give me a 53 or a 55, a 29 or a 25, a 21 or a 15, a 15 or a 3. So no combination of this can give me a 5. So I can leave it as this first answer or as the second answer with the minus factored out. Either one of those is comparable and correct.